Coming in at number 5, we've got SCP-2678. This one is known as the Vor Hole. Let that sink in for a second. Interestingly enough, this SCP is no longer available on the wiki proper. You have to find the archived page to read about the Vor Hole. The current 2678 is a strange copy of an empty cathedral with an organ sitting in the middle, but the original is much, much stranger. Hopefully I don't cause any problems by bringing the OG Vor Hole back into the public eye. Ready for some weirdness? Because I'm not. So if you're driving around the southeastern states, you might find some telltale signs of this SCP. Billboards on the highway will suddenly display new advertisements, ones for places, products, or experiences that don't exist. However, the legitimacy of the ads doesn't really matter, as anyone who sees one will be compelled to pull over and get out of their car in order to search for SCP-2678. Near these billboards will be a busted up old structure, maybe an abandoned roadside motel or a shack from the pre-highway days. Either way, the billboard citers will feel like they have to enter this space and will find some sort of entrance. The entrance acts as an access point to a spatial distortion which leads to SCP-2678. Folks will then find themselves in a big, weird cathedral of sorts, full of caustic air that quickly degrades any and all biological material. In the center of the room, there is a pit, and at the bottom of this pit, there is some sort of entity. People are drawn towards this hole, throw themselves in, and then are swallowed whole by the creature in there. Yikes. To make matters even weirder, folks affected by this tend to express odd increases in body temperature and libido. So they get all riled up and then they get swallowed whole by a monster. I guess that's what some people are into, but to be forced off the highway and lured into something's belly doesn't exactly sound like a rational choice. There's a quasi-religious and pretty cult-like organization that supports this anomaly, and they believe that if enough people are consumed by the thing in the hole, their goals will be completed. So extra creepy, extra weird. For now, just avoid tourist traps altogether. It's never worth it anyways. This way you avoid spending any money on cheap trinkets, and you also don't get drawn into a weird cult consumption craze. Coming in at number 4, we've got SCP-919. Mirror images and doppelgangers are a staple of mythology across the world. There's nothing creepier than coming across someone who is exactly like you, but separate from you. It's unsettling, uncanny, and unpleasant. Naturally, folks have some reservations about mirrors as well. If the person on the other side started acting out of turn, what are you supposed to do with that information? Just pretend it didn't happen, or walk around the rest of your life with the knowledge that there is some other version of you trapped in a reflective surface, in all reflective surfaces? If you agree that mirrors can be truly creepy under the right circumstances, SCP-919 is going to weird you right out. It seems to be a full-length mirror in excellent condition. However, if somebody stands in front of it for more than 15 seconds, their reflection will break synchronization and act of its own accord. It will beg the person not to leave, which is fraught with implications. This mirror person will seem to be totally autonomous and fully self-aware. Its memories will be the same as whoever it's reflecting, but it also knows that if the person leaves, it will cease to exist. If said person moves to a spot where the reflection is no longer visible, their reflection will scream and disintegrate. Sounds painful. Worse yet, if the person returns to the mirror, their reflection will also return, and then also seemingly have knowledge that their doppelganger knowingly let them experience that disintegrating agony. Continued exposure to this mirror has been proven to be detrimental to subjects' mental health. Seeing yourself beg for your life and then hearing your own screams of agony as your double disintegrates will do that to a person. All in all, it's a good thing that the Foundation keeps this hidden away from the public. Here's something even weirder. If the original subject dies while in front of the mirror image does not perish. In fact, it'll request that you leave the body behind so that it can continue to exist. But once the corpse is cleared, the disintegration will happen anyways. Grim. Coming in at number 3, we've got SCP-1728, Headless Butterman. Need I say more? Probably not, but I will anyways. This greasy, dairy-filled freak is a very weird case indeed. See, it's a headless humanoid without the ability to speak, but it can still perceive and interact with the world around it as any other human might. It's got the mind of a child and is able to write, using this ability to communicate with the Foundation personnel. Pretty weird so far, but that is just the beginning. SCP-1728 is constantly exuding a substance chemically identical to unsalted butter from its its skin. If you wipe it away, more will be produced. This makes SCP-1728 very slippery. The butter will stay on its body until it brushes up against something, and the butter will wipe off onto that object. And at the ends of its fingers, it has hollow bone points that also exude butter. These can be used to write using the butter and as low-pressure butter jets. Now, Butterman doesn't like being in containment. He used to have a cast iron knife that didn't slip from his grip, but the Foundation has locked it away. So Butterman does his best to avoid being contained, and the slipperiness helps him a lot with this goal. He can squeeze out of most restraints thanks to the butter, and can even slide around at speeds up to 34 kilometers per hour. It's like a butter frozone. For now, the Foundation has a series of procedures that seem to be able to keep 1728 in place. Cold helps to keep him still, and for whatever reason, polyurethane works better than all sorts of other materials at preventing slippage. Personally, I would be stoked to have a butter-producing friend, but he did stab a person before being contained, so it might not be a healthy friendship. Coming in at number 2, we've got SCP-093. Now here is another SCP involving the misuse of mirrors. That's not all that's notable here, but it seemed right to mention it. While the SCP itself isn't a monster, if used correctly, it opens a gate to a world filled with some of the scariest monsters this side of 682. 093 is a disc carved from a material resembling cinnabar, covered in strange symbols. It will change colors based on whoever's holding it, although it's not really known what each color means at this time. The thing wants to be on a mirror, and if you place it somewhere that isn't reflective, it will roll until it finds its way onto a shinier surface. At that point, if somebody makes contact with the disc, they will begin to move into the mirrored surface, and if allowed to continue through, will find themselves in a brand new place. Depending on the color of the disc, the subject will end up somewhere different. In the alternate world, something has gone terribly wrong. Folks have discovered that a hyper-religious sect took over for a while, and a new godlike being began rewarding those it considered clean of sin. In order to fight a holy war against some really horrifying beasts, the godlike entity granted humans some wicked technological advances, ones that ran on a strange religious substance known as his tears. Unfortunately, this substance also had great corruptive power, and turned a lot of folks into the very monsters they set out to purify. The unclean, giant humanoids cut off at the legs. They crawl around absorbing people into their bodies, and really that's just the beginning of it. Thankfully, the Foundation has the disc contained, so hopefully nobody's making any unintended round trips into this alternate world. And finally, at number 1, we've got SCP-504. Remember that movie, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes? Well, these are definitely one type of killer tomato. They look and smell and taste just like normal tomatoes, and if, nobody ever made a bad joke, they'd actually be indistinguishable from your garden variety fruit. But terrible humor is a hallmark of humanity, and therefore these tomatoes are deadly. Anytime a bad joke is made in the vicinity of one of these tomatoes, they instantly accelerate to a speed of at least 100 miles per hour towards the source of the sound. That is one quick sandwich ingredient. It doesn't matter what condition the fruits are in. You can have them sliced, whole, smashed, etc., but the pieces will go flying towards that joke, and the results are messy. A nice mix of blood and ketchup, and sometimes it's hard to tell apart. Apparently, the harder the person telling the joke is trying to be funny, the faster the tomatoes will move. So leave your worst, best joke in the comments, and we'll see if any of these tomatoes come flying in for revenge. Yeah, those are weird, like extra weird. Weirder than your average anomaly, wouldn't you say? Coming in at number 5, we've got SCP-5000. The entity itself isn't all that scary, but it has many stories to tell, so very many. See, SCP-5000 is a non-functional mechanical suit known as an absolute exclusion harness. It was designed by the SCP Foundation, but not this SCP Foundation. Somehow it made its way into our dimension, or whatever the dimension the folks writing the entry originated in, containing the corpse of Pietro Wilson. Pietro is a Foundation employee, and also very much so alive in the case of the Foundation that's writing this entry. So what happened here? Through some sneaky research and observation of files within the suit, Foundation folks were able to piece together what happened, and the story is not a happy one. In fact, it's quite terrifying, especially if you consider that it happened in a dimension not unlike our own. The logs begin with other Pietro explaining that he's probably the only one left. What does that mean? How did he escape with one of these crazy suits? Well, soon we learn exactly what's going on. The SCP Foundation has decided to exterminate the human race. Their objective has switched from secure, contain, protect to annihilate all humans. Immediately after making their once secret presence known, they went on the offensive, using all the anomalies at their disposal to make this task a little easier. And Pietro is essentially a wayward wanderer, bearing witness to all this madness. As he makes his way through the rapidly disintegrating world, his absolute exclusion harness makes it so that nobody will see him. The suit makes it impossible for any outside influence to observe him or the device. Super helpful when you're in a world being dominated by a ruthless organization, filled to the brim with deadly monsters. Like, get this. Pietro writes down all the different tales of the Foundation letting loose anomalies on the general public. They widely distribute photographs of 096 and then let it run free. They detonate nukes on 196's back, causing it to stir, which results in massive earthquakes and tsunamis. Mr. Deeds, the magic butler, is called upon to assassinate all sorts of folks. The flesh that hates is spread about in major city centers, and 682 is just straight up released. Not good. Just about every horrific thing they worked so hard to avoid is now just happening at large, all with the ultimate goal of wiping humans off the face of the earth. And Pietro, our faithful narrator, is just wandering the wastes, unable to be perceived, but seeing it all happen in real time. If that's not the scariest possible SCP story, then we might have reached a point where it could actually happen. Coming in at number 4, we've got the End of Death. There's a strange fixation on death throughout the SCP Wiki. I suppose humans exist to prolong their own lives and prevent our species from ever dying out. The ultimate fear in the back of people's minds is their own death and the inability to stop it, mostly anyways. So it makes sense that there are so many different SCPs directly linked to death. One extra secret SCP details the discovery that after dying we still retain some semblance of consciousness, forced to feel our bodies decompose in the darkness long after we're buried. Another one looks at how the linear, progressive passage of time is actually an anomaly and has caused billions of deaths. No stopping that. But what if death didn't happen? Or rather, couldn't? Welcome to the End of Death Hub. This is a whole separate canon within the SCP Wiki. Plenty of contributors have added to this particular horror story, one in which the entire observable world ceases to experience the effects of death. Immortality is forced upon all life without any other biological change. At first, this doesn't sound so bad, right? Death is scary. We don't want our loved ones to die. We don't want to die ourselves. The other side of that river Styx is unknown and therefore horrifying. So eternal life would be pretty sweet, no? Well, actually, it would be a total nightmare. Death is essential for life to continue. It's natural, it's needed. Without death, many things would be unable to change, unable to grow, and more. Overpopulation quickly becomes a major issue in this sprawling story as organizations and individuals alike seek out ways to keep the growth of everything under control. Also keep in mind that free from death does not mean free from pain and suffering. If you run out of food or experience major bodily trauma, you won't die and just be free from that suffering. Instead, you'll feel it more intensely than previously thought possible. And for longer too. That starvation feeling will never disappear. Those fatal injuries will plague you. Not fun. So if you really want a truly scary SCP story, check out the End of Death Hub, pick through a few entries, and see how awful life without death could truly be. Coming in at number 3, we've got SCP 4000. Listen carefully to this story, because if you mess any of the rules up, you could find yourself in a world of hurt. SCP 4000 is a very strange case. It's a forested land only accessible through weird ritual. Those who do complete the tasks required to travel here show up in a well and must walk down a path until they loop back to the start. During these walks, they will encounter all sorts of anomalous creatures. The creatures that live here come in all shapes and sizes and often undergo horrible mutations. Unfortunately, they're not huge fans of being mutated and can get pretty upset about it. Here's where the rules start to kick in. Do not call anything by a consistent name. Don't answer to a consistent name. Accept any gifts presented to you, but don't use or consume them. And if a ghost tells you that it's not a creature, listen to what it says. Follow these to a T and you might just make it out unscathed. But if you goof up and call something a consistent name, you might end up experiencing some really strange stuff. Creatures from SCP-4000 could appear to you in the real world as terrible hallucinations, or maybe not as hallucinations. Yikes. See, names are powerful things. They anchor a person or thing to their identity. But if we're to believe the stories of SCP-4000, the inhabitants of this world are Fae, banished here without any names or titles. If you give one of these things your name, they might just take it, and from there it can only go downhill. You could find yourself mutating, shifting, or changing without knowledge of why, just like a certain scholar, but we won't talk too much about him here. Coming in at number 2, we've got SCP-1782. At first, this anomaly appears to be an abandoned apartment in Kiev that is constantly changing. Every few days, it instantaneously changes its appearance and contents. Often these things can be quite gross, quite macabre. One famous instance of this is when it was found to be full of birds and there was an old man inside feeding himself to them. The manifestations found in the apartment often point towards the toilet in the back. Further investigation shows that there's some weird stuff consistently back there. An odd dude with a TV camera showed some Foundation staff that there was a horrific cross between a human skeleton and a septic tank hidden back there. Even stranger, a fetus would appear in the toilet from time to time. It has been said that this fetus would have been a reality bender, but its mother didn't carry it to term. This angered it, and it now changes the observable reality within the apartment. However, it does so with a partially developed brain, leading to unexpected and often incomprehensible results. Nobody's been inside the apartment since, with the Foundation preferring to explore it using drones. Even then, the tales people tell of this apartment are so hard to parse, who knows what's really going on in there. And finally, at number 1, we've got SCP-5999. This is an absolute gem of a story. In fact, there are many stories threaded throughout. There's the story of the cursed video game, Prodigy Priest King, which sends all who play it into an obsessive, quasi-religious furor. Nobody survives playing the game, although the results are always a little different. There are the anomalous remains of a Miss Jacqueline Holcroft that seem to haunt all those who encounter them through auditory and visual hallucinations. Those who read far enough might find loose teeth in their drawers or corpses in places they shouldn't be. There's a town in Kansas chock full of ghastly apparitions and MTF-destroying ghouls. People fall through the earth and later reappear to torment their kin. So many things happen throughout the many 5999 entries, all hidden behind major security clearance barriers, but if you make it through, blowing out the candles one by one, you might find that the chains are weakening. This means you're closer to the whole story, but also much closer to danger. Do you dare read the whole thing, or will you just take my word that it's scary and live your life without that? Some chilling stories for these chilly nights. What could be better, right? Well, the way some of these tales end, I'm sure you'd rather they didn't exist in the first place, but hey. Kicking us off at number 5, we've got SCP-2599. Most reality benders are dangerous because they can change the world according to their will. If they have something sinister in mind, they'll put it into action and there isn't much anyone can do to stop them, or even realize what's going on. But with 2599, anyone can speak changes into existence. Like, as long as you have access to the 14-year-old girl now known as SCP-2599, you can potentially get anything you want. Well, at least sort of. SCP-2599 has an anomalous effect that breaks down into 2 components. First, they can't disobey any direct commands. This has no limits, even ending up with 2599 scoring a 0 on the psychic resistance scale. Hypothetically, you could tell 2599 to fly and they would. Or ask them to alter the composition or color of a piece of paper and it would happen. However, part 2 adds an interesting caveat to this anomalous quality. 2599, while always obeying direct commands, will never be able to fully carry out the tasks. They'll mostly clean a room or get most of the way through a book or even mostly kill a person. That's right, if you ask 2599 to kill someone, they'll stab them but somehow manage to only hit necrotic tissue left over from a prior heart attack, so they won't actually die. What's been described so far is mostly within the realm of reason though. If you were to order 2599 to do something that changes aspects of reality or breaks the laws of physics, they would mostly be able to do that. Of course, it wouldn't be to the exact specifications you gave, but it would be close. Careful giving orders though, paradoxes can be really finicky. One time a researcher gave 2599 the command, "Do not lie," when repeating these sentences. The following sentence is true, the previous sentence is false. This caused 2599 to totally freeze up, followed by micro changes being noticeable in reality. I don't think even 2599 comes close to understanding the scope of their reality altering abilities. Coming in at number 4, we've got SCP-343. Oh god, I almost forgot about this guy. See what I did there? Man, maybe I did spend too much time at home. Ignoring what I just said, let's discuss the reality-altering capabilities of SCP-343. Right now, he's just chilling in a Foundation holding cell. Foundation staff saw him essentially teleport from the street to a rooftop in Prague and detained him shortly after. However, there's really nothing they can do to keep him there. 343 comes and goes as he pleases. Most of the time, he'll chill out with the guards and talk for hours. He's managed to lavishly outfit his cell and is known to head out for periods of time to snag a burger or two. Mostly, he's harmless, or I suppose as far as we know. It's hard to tell when he literally claims to be God and can manipulate reality. Actually, those powers are a little worrisome, especially when you read a little deeper. There used to be a Foundation doctor that was a little curious about the actual implications of such a reality bender. He did a little digging and got disappeared. Like, there are little bits and pieces of the doctor and his research, but no official records of any such person in any Foundation database. Even though it seems that 343 increases morale and is able to speak intelligently on literally any topic, he might be worried that someone could find out some incriminating information. If that happens consistently, 343 might even decide to blow this popsicle stand for good, altering reality so that the Foundation itself never existed. Or maybe, just maybe, he'll keep eating burgers and shooting the breeze with security guards. Coming in at number 3, we've got SCP-2241. Now, if you want someone totally volatile, look no further than 2241. Children are volatile for sure, especially when they have reality-changing powers and don't totally understand how to use them or the implications of such abilities. There's a lot of growing to be done, and if the proper care isn't taken, a young reality bender could end up causing some serious issues. Keeping an eye on 2241 should be of the utmost importance then. This is a 7-year-old boy named Cameron. When he was discovered by the Foundation, he had some telekinetic abilities and appeared to have latent reality bending abilities. In order to keep him largely in line, Foundation folks decided to start putting him through a training regimen. Of course, they got to do some research too. He's convinced that he's a superhero being trained for heroic duties. At first, he avoided violence, opting to turn knives into chocolate and teleporting people out of harm's way, but this proved to be undesirable for testing purposes, so the Foundation cranked up the difficulty and life or death stakes during these operations. Whether this will negatively affect his mental state is yet to be seen. It definitely sped up the awakening of new abilities though. This little lad is zipping through the air, seeing seconds into the future and transforming matter without needing to see it. He considers it all leveling up so he can help people, but the researchers within the Foundation may have more sinister and militaristic plans for the young dude. Eventually he'll realize the scope of his own powers and will have to make a choice about what he's doing with them. Let's hope he makes the right one. Coming in at number 2, we've got SCP-3999. Man, if there is one reality-altering skip that seems to come up again and again, it's gotta be 3999. Poor researcher Talleyrand, stuck in an insane jail of his own invention. This SCP threatens to end the world as it poses a ZK-class end-of-reality scenario. Yep. Ending reality counts as altering it. For whatever reason, this world-ending anomaly took great interest in a Foundation researcher known as Talleyrand. To prevent the destructive effects of this thing from reaching the world at large, the Foundation hid Talleyrand away, far away from human populations. Although even this is debatable, as the document outlining special containment procedures seems to have been heavily edited and possibly even altered along with rapidly shifting reality. So the best way to get an idea of what the hell is going on here is to read the document in full. In doing so, you'll see just how unbelievable and hard to understand things can get. It's implied that most of the document is written by Talleyrand as they experienced unending torment. 3999 constantly alters reality in the area around them, forcing them to live through truly horrible and painful scenarios over and over again. Although this may be awful for Talleyrand, the rest of the world is lucky that the effects don't spill over. If 3999 made it to the world at large, we may all have to face down our families dying in front of us, weird Harry Potter references, scented candle confusion, children laughing at us, and of course, ceaseless agony. Thanks, Talleyrand. And coming in at number 1, we've got SCP-2343. And honestly, this reality bender can keep doing what he's doing. If what he says is correct, we definitely do not want to meet his wife under any circumstances. So let him deal with that and leave him well alone. 2343 is a humanoid that looks to be in his late 50s. The Foundation picked up on his presence after a long night of drinking. Yep, he got too drunk and let his abilities slip. If that's not relatable, I don't know what is. So the Foundation picked him up and brought him in for questioning. During this time, he produced some cigarettes and a lighter, neither of which could be found afterwards. Or maybe it was a guitar. Who knows? Either way, he seems to be able to voluntarily restructure reality, and he's been pretty responsible with it. Mostly, he just grabs food or cigarettes for his own consumption, but the night he was found, he was assaulted by his wife, and then the Foundation took him in. This is particularly bad news because it appears that his wife has quite the temper and can also alter reality. So when she finds out where her husband's being kept, she probably won't take it in stride. No, she'll probably turn everyone inside out and then beat up her husband again. No wonder the poor guy took to drinking. He's pretty worried about this happening too. In fact, he's added his own addendums to these special containment procedures, calling out the Foundation and their reality anchors, attempting to convince him to work with him to find his wife before things get out of hand. I'd say help the man.
Starting off this list in our number 5 spot, we have SCP-1128. This SCP is a bit different than some of the other ones today, and that is because it is more of an etheric entity. This creature has the ability to manifest itself as an enormous aquatic predator, but only to those who have been given a full description of its appearance, so I'll try to refrain from doing that today. People who have been infected by the creature won't really show any symptoms or abnormal behavior, but it is possible that they might show extreme aversion to going into water. If an infected person enters the water and is fully submerged, no matter the depth, they will completely disappear underneath the surface of the water. Most of the time they will reappear a few moments later in a state of total panic, frantically trying to get out of the water, but other times instead of reappearing above the water, you'll instead see blood and debris cloud it, with the debris later being able to be confirmed as the vanished person. The lucky ones who have survived have explained that while they had vanished, they were transported to the vast ocean where they were actively being pursued by SCP-1128. This is all absolutely frightening and is the reason behind why any descriptions of the SCP are treated with the utmost importance, and it is highly classified information. Any videos or descriptions or imagery are meant to be destroyed immediately, and only written descriptions are allowed, but they are kept at a specific site for experiment testing and not meant for just anyone. Some of the high-level personnel who have seen these descriptions of SCP-1128 have found themselves being pulled into a glass of water, which makes it abundantly clear that no matter who or where you are, it will find you and it will do its best to complete its mission. I don't know about you guys, but I don't ever want to encounter SCP-1128. Moving on to number 4, we have SCP-1000. This is an SCP that is currently on the loose, and if anyone ever reports any sightings or contact with this SCP, MTF Zeta 1000 will always need to be sent to not only verify the claims, but also to investigate. Even if it seems unlikely or trivial, every report is considered quite serious and will be looked into. That is because this SCP can be extremely dangerous. SCP-1000 is a nocturnal creature that has quite a few human characteristics. In fact, this SCP evolved alongside the Homo sapiens species. Adults of SCP-1000 grow to be somewhere from 5 to 10 feet tall and weigh somewhere from 200 to 600 pounds. They have more primitive human features like a more pronounced brow bone and that sort of thing, and it is said that their intelligence is comparable to that of a common chimpanzee. Like I mentioned before, this SCP evolved alongside humans, and their numbers were actually quite vast until about 10,000 years ago. This is when there was a large extinction event that wiped out most of the population except for an estimated 1 to 5%. This extinction event of course proved to be horrific, and in the end it triggered a quote pseudo-disease classified as SCP-1000-F1, but unfortunately this disease is passed on, which means that every SCP-1000 that exists now likely is infected. Here's where things get really scary. Basically, this disease is so bad that any hominid that either directly or even indirectly observes SCP-1000 that is infected has a chance that they will die instantaneously through this disease. Brain function will simply just end. The longer the contact, the more likely it is that this grim fate will be met. What the Foundation is most worried about right now is that since SCP-1000 is so closely related to humans, that it is possible that the disease could be transferred and humans could one day become carriers, which would prove to be lethal to the majority of our population. This is all to say that not only can the Foundation not even fully examine SCP-1000, but that no one should ever even try. In our number 3 spot today, we have SCP-169. SCP-169 is a bit of an enigma because it is said that it cannot and will never be contained. There is no structure on Earth large or strong enough to hold SCP-169, and while the exact location of it currently is unknown, satellite images suggest that it is located in the southern Atlantic Ocean. SCP-169 is said to be a marine arthropod of massive size, and if you've ever heard the tales of the Leviathan, you might have an idea of how massive this creature really is, but think get even bigger. At first it was presumed that the tales were just myths, but during investigations of supposed paranormal activity, its existence became feared. There currently aren't any other known specimens of SCP-169, and that truly is for the best because I don't even know if the world could handle another one. The creature is estimated to have a body length of somewhere from 2,000 to 8,000 kilometers, and it is thought to have existed since the pre-Cambrian era. As far as we know, this single specimen is the only one of its kind, and next to nothing is known about its lifestyle. The creature moves quite slowly at a pace of less than 1 kilometer per week, but it is currently believed that it is just adrift. In the area that is believed to be the current location of the creature, there has been regular seismic tremors detected, and this is thought to be indicative of SCP-169's breathing. These tremors cause minor shifts in the island's terrain, so it is believed that the creature is currently dormant. Right now, the location where the Foundation thinks the SCP is off limits to humans. The public excuse being used is because there is a high number of endangered bird species in the area, but that is just a coincidence, and it really is restricted because of this enormous creature. Unfortunately, this SCP is quite loud. I mean, of course it is, it's massive, and because of this there have been recordings of it released by scientists and civilians to the Foundation's dismay. The Foundation has engaged in cover-ups so as to not shock the public with news of this SCP, and now the Foundation is very wary of any and all scientific or civilian teams who try to capture the sound because they will enact protocol to stop them. In our number 2 spot today, we have SCP-1440. SCP-1440 is currently uncontained and has been on the loose since its last containment breach. Since the breach, this SCP's location is completely unknown, and at the moment, the Foundation really doesn't have the means to contain it, even if they did know where to find it. This SCP appears as a man of unknown ethnicity and age, and if asked about any of these types of things, it will definitely refuse to answer. The Foundation is unsure of if this is because it just doesn't know the answer, or if it is just unwilling to share any information about itself. Either way, you should definitely never be in a position where you are asking SCP-1440 about itself, because things could quickly go awry. This SCP appears to be a man in or around his 80s, but the peculiar thing with this is that there have been no signs of aging with this SCP in the 50 years since its first discovery. While this is all fine, things start to get really dicey, and this SCP shows its true colors when it comes into contact with any man-made object or with the human population, and it stays in contact for longer than a couple of days. This is because any extended exposure to humanity-made objects or people creates this adverse reaction from the SCP. It will suddenly turn and simply will not rest until it destroys that item or person. If it has any trouble, like if the person were to try and get away, the SCP will stop at nothing and will destroy anything that gets in the way until it has officially taken out its target. The only exceptions to this rule are the SCP itself and the items that belong to him, like his clothes and a small glass cup he carries. SCP-1440 in all of his terrifying glory is a self-aware SCP. He knows he has these extremely violent tendencies, so he does try to refrain from coming into contact with the human population, but despite his best efforts, he will inevitably run into people and their things. SCP-1440 travels in quite an odd and complex pattern, which means that attempts to track him have been highly unsuccessful, so his current whereabouts are unknown at this time. Right now it is thought that SCP-1440 can't be destroyed, either because of the fact that, upon his initial discovery, when brought in for questioning, he went on to destroy the entire site as well as caused the deaths of a redacted amount of personnel and 6 other SCPs. Any other containment attempts have resulted in similar results. In our number 1 spot today, we have SCP-682. This is an SCP that at this point in time there are no available means of destroying, despite the Foundation's desire to. If we ever find the technology that allows for the destruction of this SCP, they will most definitely go ahead with that, because SCP-682 is far too strong, way too powerful, and just too dangerous. This SCP appears as a large sort of reptilian type creature with an unknown origin, but it also has quite the hatred for all life. SCP-682 is highly intelligent and capable of complex communication, and this hatred for life coupled with its smarts is really quite a deadly combination. SCP-682 consumes as well as sheds material, which means that its size does change from time to time, of course growing larger with consumption and smaller with the shedding. Despite Despite its size, however, it always exhibits high strength, speed, and reflexes, which makes it quite a strong opponent. It appears as though this SCP gets its energy through consuming different materials, whether organic materials or otherwise. And another frightening thing about it is that even when it is struggling, or partially destroyed, or has great damage, it is still exceptionally resilient. It was once observed with 87% of its body damaged, but it was still able to fight and in the end escape and regenerate. The Foundation continually tries its best to find and recapture SCP-682, but it always finds a way to escape each time, with close to 20 attempted escapes and 6 successful ones so far, but those numbers only grow each time it faces capture. When this SCP is captured, it needs to be held in a 5 by 5 by 5 meter chamber with 25 centimeter reinforced acid-resistant steel plate lining the entire inside. This is because the chamber needs to be filled with hydrochloric acid that the SCP is then submerged in, and any attempts to even move or speak or anything by the SCP needs to be responded to with full force until they find a way to destroy it once and for all.